till he comes. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. I actually got a chance to take a picture of Jupiter and Virgo and Leo this morning, very early this morning, on December 15th at 4 a.m. in the morning Central Standard Time. But it was a beautiful walk at 4 o'clock in the morning, nice and cold too. But it's so beautiful to see creation, and it's so quiet, and it was refreshing in a sense to be able to look up and see Jupiter and Leo and this celestial prophetic sign that's going on right now. And like I've said before, it does something when you can see it, because then it impresses upon you the reality of the time we're at right now. It's not just something we're talking about on YouTube, but when you actually go outside and look at it in the night sky, it really helps impress on you that this is happening right now. This sign is in the heavens, and you can see it. So the bright star is obviously Jupiter, and here is an approximate configuration that most people are familiar with that uses the indented side on the International Astronomy Union charts too as well. So you can see it's almost into the side of Virgo. And when I zoomed in with my camera, you can see the particular area of interest right there. Jupiter's getting real close, and on the 16th it's going to be transiting that area, but it's real slow, so I can't tell you an hour or a day, but it's getting real close. By the late 17th, it should be past that line. But when I really zoomed out here, I could get a picture of Virgo and Leo up there at the top. And it's hard to express how large these two constellations are. These are some of the largest constellations along the ecliptic. Virgo is the second largest one. I'm looking at Virgo ahead right above the horizon. Leo is almost right overhead. It's about 80 degrees up. So it takes up a huge portion of the sky along the ecliptic. This is a huge sign. And it was amazing to be able to see the stars and the constellations, recognize it easily, even with a full moon out, which normally lights up the background of the sky. When we look at the lines, we can see the story right in the heavens being rehearsed for us, the sign of Shiloh, and also see the sign of the Son of Man about to start too as well. It's incredible. And we talked about yesterday, we're in the palm section of Virgo right now. And there's a lot of pictures. We could talk more about that as well. But we're in the palm segment of Virgo that's associated with Virgo. And the enemy knows this too as well. And we're just a few days and hours away from a pregnancy rehearsal starting on the late 17th. And that would be starting the 40-week count too as well. Of a virgin. And note, she's called a virgin for a reason. This is not a picture of the church. We've talked about this so many different ways in our Shiloh booklet. And we're born of God. We're not born of flesh. A pregnancy rehearsal is about to start in the one who is called the virgin. That should be a big clue that a pregnancy picture is not a picture of the bride that the bridegroom's coming for. If you're pregnant, you're not a virgin. I don't know how to put that any other way, but the Revelation 12 sign has not anything to do with the church. The bridegroom is coming for his virgins. We are born of God. And then the sign of the Son of Man, who is the only one who has ever been born of a virgin, that sign is about to start. It has nothing to do with us. And we are in an incredible time right now. Right here at this threshold between these two signs, where the sign of Shiloh is about to hand off to the sign of the Son of Man, who is the only one who has ever been born of a pregnant virgin. Now, in our last video, in the comments, I made a note about how there is an alternate way to figure out the pattern of midnight. And since this year is an intercalculated year with an extra month added at the end of the year, there are 13 months. And so when you figure the middle of the night portion for that, it brings it to the 14th and 15th. So we're at the midnight hour right now. But I included the 12 month as a reminder because that is a typical midnight hour. And there's 12 hours in a day, even Jesus said. So in a sense, we do have two reminders. We have a biblical pattern of when midnight would be, but then also knowing the time, the calendar time, we know when a calendar midnight would also be. So it's interesting to see the interplay between these two, but time-wise, a calendar midnight would be right about now. And again, the night portion was divided into 4 different watches, midnight being between the second watch and the third watch. So on 12 months, the midnight hour would be at the start of the 10th month. In 13 months, the midnight hour would fall in the middle of the 10th month. And we're in the 10th month right now, and this is the month when Esther went to the king's house, when she was taken to the king's house sometime in the 10th month. We do not know the day or hour, But we've been reminded about midnight and that we need to shine bright, and now we're at midnight and right on the threshold too as well. And we've just passed the full moon. Amazing reminder that we should be shining bright. And there's other celestial events with the moon at this time. On the 17th, the same day that the sign of the Son of Man is starting, the moon is going to be right near Regulus. And Regulus is known as the heart of the lion. So again, amazing celestial signs are going on right now, pointing to the Shiloh sign and pointing to the one who was born of a virgin, Shiloh, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And then a few days after that, on December 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, the moon will be catching up with where Jupiter is in Virgo. After the pregnancy picture has started, the moon will now be pointing at Jupiter in the sign of the Son of Man. And so it's interesting how it's transitioning between both of these right at this time, right at this threshold. But this article caught my attention because it mentions that during December, Jupiter is going to be the only morning star. It's going to be brighter than any star. But it emphasizes Jupiter is the only morning star. And who are we looking for? We are looking for the morning star. And right now, Jupiter has that technical designation. And right now, Jupiter is also the pattern of the king and Shiloh too as well. And he's also the morning star right now. The promised Redeemer. Incredible choreography in the heavens right now. So when we look back on the timeline where we are right now, take note of the Shiloh passage that's being read this Sabbath, which is all about the sign of the Son of Man happening at the exact same time. We have the Bible passage pointing to this prophecy. We have the moon pointing to this prophecy. We have Jupiter pointing to this prophecy. There's so many celestial signs going on right now. We should be expecting our bridegroom any moment now. And we've talked about how the enemy knows exactly what time this is too. They know we're at a threshold. They know where Jupiter is. And they know that Jupiter is in a particular relation to Virgo right now in the Palm area even specifically. We've seen so much messaging because they know that as soon as the Son of Man is revealed and picks up his bride, as soon as he snatches and takes away his bride, the son of perdition will be unrestrained. And that's what they're hoping for and expecting. Their palm, their phoenix, to come onto the scene. And we talked about how on the 14th they put out the Google Doodle, and then that was also the same time that the Pepsi full moon signal was pointing to as well. But then on the same day, they released a trailer for the Dunkirk evacuation. And we've talked about this analogy several times before because this is a perfect example of a large-scale evacuation. They released this trailer just yesterday with a heavy emphasis on going forward to the water. They know the Exodus picture, and they know prophetically where we are right now. They know there's about to be a falling away. They know there's about to be a military falling back. And that's the whole emphasis of this movie is the Dunkirk evacuation on the beaches going toward the water. Just like Exodus. Incredible picture. And very poignant that they put it out at this time. We are the soldiers of Christ. We are the ambassadors of Christ. We are the diplomatic corps of Christ. There's going to be an evacuation. There's going to be a falling back, a falling away, a departure from Egypt. And the enemy knows it. And they're expecting it as part of their strategy. They are looking for us to get out of the way. So that was on the 14th. And we've talked also about a lot of the huge emphasis on Nimrod and Nimrod, the city, and a lot of destruction of artifacts that reinforce their pattern and allow them to bring up those patterns in the news about Palmyra and Baal and Bel and the palms and the phoenix, and allow them to point out messaging about the triumphal entry of their Baal, Marduk, Nimrod figure, their timekeeper from the underworld, connected with lions. We've seen a lot of messaging, choreographed and precise and systematic. And they've even been pushing the pattern forward to the future. And they still have not announced that third setup yet either. Because it is in the future. I think they're keeping it that way. But they are expecting their idol shepherd. We are expecting the good shepherd to come and pick up his other fold. They are expecting that once we get out of the way, the idol shepherd's going to be coming. Who they see as a hero. So it caught our attention that the same day that the Google Doodle came out and that the Dunkirk evacuation trailer came out, another exhibit started about Palmyra. Another one. And about the Triumphal Arch and the Temple of Baal. And it had a few other places that were affected by the violence in the Middle East. But they're definitely pushing Palmyra, and right on the poster for the event, definitely pushing the Triumphal Gate in Palmyra. But take note that they're pushing several other important pictures as well. And this was no small event. This was actually getting more attention than the Colosseum event. This one is promoted by UNESCO and is right up the road from the Louvre Museum. But they even had the President of France there to kick off the exhibit too as well. They're really pushing these messages at higher and higher and higher levels. And it caught my attention that one place they were pushing is a place in Afghanistan, Bamiyan, which means the place of shining light. Shining light, right here at the midnight hour, calendar-wise, they're pushing a place that's connected with shining light. And a number of the places that they were emphasizing were also in Khorsabad, which is connected with Gilgamesh and all of the other pictures they've been recently pushing. These selections are not accidental. They have to do with Nimrod. And one that they're pushing the most is the Palmyra picture, because we are in the palm time, so they're definitely pushing that. You'll see that a lot in the trailers that they put out for that, and in the news, definitely making sure you get the palm and the triumphal entry connection. Now, one thing I learned today I did not even know, but Palmyra is known as the Bride of the Desert. Maybe you already knew that, but I just somehow did not see that. And the Wikipedia article doesn't even mention it, so that's probably why I didn't even notice it. But Bride of the Desert, this is what they're pushing right now. Palmyra, a bride who needs to be shining bright, here at the midnight hour in the 10th month. And they had a few official press release pictures, and they were emphasizing the President of France at this UNESCO kickoff, bringing attention to a lion, a bronze lion. They only had a few pictures with this event, but they're making sure you make a connection with these Palmyra and the lion. They know exactly what they're doing. There's a lot being tied together, but take notice that it's a bronze lion, which reminds us of Trafalgar Square, which has 4 massive bronze lions, and that's what the square is known for, along with Nelson the Timekeeper and how they wanted to put up the Baal Arch, which is what they're bringing attention back to at the same time with all this exact same patterns and messaging. And it caught my attention that this particular artifact they were showing, a bronze lion from Khorsabad Palace, they're displaying it in this context of Palmyra. It's from Khorsabad, which is where these other artifacts at the Louvre Museum are also located. It's from the exact same place, Khorsabad, all going back to Nimrod. This is the pictures they're pulling up right now. It also connects with Hercules and Theseus that the Arch Institute is promoting to as well. They know a gathering is about to take place. So when we look back at the timeline and see this event which goes through January 9th, they're having it for quite a while and it's a big event. But take notice of the patterns, the consistent patterns that they're pushing at higher and higher levels with higher and higher volume. They know what time it is celestially. They know what time it is calendar-wise. They know what time it is biblically and prophetically in the last generation. They know the bride is about to be taken away. They know the bride is about to be gathered and that she should be shining bright. So here we are just past midnight, which is when the midnight cry went out in the parable that Jesus told his disciples about. So we're just past midnight. We've had so many warnings. We should be expecting to meet up with our bridegroom right after midnight. And we're at an area that we're already expecting him to show up too. There are so many things coming together right now. There are 4 different prophetic events, all separate, coming together right here. The enemy knows it, we know it, and we're learning more and more about it as we go forward. And we've been learning more about this Shiloh sign in addition to the peace and safety in the last generation and all that pointing to this exact same time. The opposition point, we've been studying that and looking at it, and I've been learning quite a bit more about how it applies to now. We have observed how the enemy knows the opposition mark area, but we also gathered that it was important beyond that point, and especially now we see them even more understanding this is a very important time. So I was doing some more research and thinking about it, and the Lord gave more wisdom of why the opposition point is important. But let's look at the ecliptic, and we've been learning about how the Chaldeans used Jupiter to define the ecliptic astronomical constellations along the ecliptic. And we've also observed how that particular motion from that point forms a shepherd's crook and scepter, which fits in with so many prophetic pictures mentioned throughout Scripture, particularly the Shiloh prophecy. The entire context of the Shiloh prophecy is in context of shepherds and shepherd's crooks. The good shepherd, that's who we're expecting. So we know Jupiter at opposition was used to divide it out, and they would divide it out roughly of 30 degrees for each section, and that would equally divide up the ecliptic line. And so just a little bit ago, we reached the approximate 30-degree mark. Does this actually connect, though, to the scepter? Let's examine what we've learned before. We've learned and talked about in the SHILOH booklet that Jupiter has a 12-year orbit, roughly. It's like 11.86, but it takes 12 years to go along the ecliptic. And so this is why the ancients used it to divide up the ecliptic into 12 equal portions, because it would spend 1 year in each section approximately. So notice the distinction between both of these. Jupiter would spend a year of time traveling 30 degrees distance that was measured out by opposition. The opposition points in the retrograde motions measured 10 degrees and the 30 degrees. That tells you how big of an arc in the sky it will be, but that time is different than the amount of time that Jupiter is going to be spending within that arc. And this is what we need to distinguish between. There is a difference between the amount of time that Jupiter is going to be within that distance versus what is used to measure that distance. The movement between the two opposition points tells you how wide it should be, but Jupiter has to be between those for a total of 1 year. The scepter will not move until a year has been completed, or else it'll be out of sync. So when will the scepter move? When will the scepter depart from Judah? When will the shepherd's crook move from Judah and from between the feet? It won't technically be picked up and moved till Jupiter comes around and goes to the next true opposition point. Once it reaches that point, time-wise, that is when the scepter would be picked up and moved. Not until that time point. Let me illustrate it a little bit larger so you can see it here. We know Jupiter makes its loop called the retrograde. In the middle of the retrograde, when it's going westward, it will be at opposition when it's shining the brightest. And at some other point in time, while it's in prograde, while it's going east, it will reach the approximate same mark along the ecliptic that will be 30 degrees away from where the last opposition happened. So that's just a measurement. It has nothing to do necessarily with time. It only measures out 30 degrees. But the time that the scepter stays in one location will be different than that. And technically, the scepter will not start until the opposition point, the true opposition point. And there are 13 months between opposition points. It moves slightly different than Jupiter's 12 years. And so this is part of why they did it roughly. But the scepter departs based on time. It will not leave this section until that amount of time is up, because you can't have the scepter moving time-wise ahead of where Jupiter is at, because they won't be in sync. So the scepter won't move until Jupiter actually reaches the next opposition point, because there's a set amount of time, 13 months, that Jupiter has to stay within that section. And remember, opposition was only back in March 8th. It's definitely not been a year, certainly not 13 months. So time-wise, the scepter will be here for quite a few more months. But we are just past the 30-degree mark, which measures it, but the scepter has not departed, and it can't depart until its allotted time is up, because it's part of the celestial clock. But why is a 30-degree point so important? Why is the enemy even pointing to this marker point? Because it is significant. Because it tells you where the division is, even though the scepter is not going anywhere for a while. Let me repeat that. Even though the scepter is not going anywhere for a while, we still know we're at a point that is very important, that does distinguish in the pattern between the two sections, between Virgo, between the lion. So you have the symbolic picture patterns coming into play at this time, while the scepter is still in Judah, and while the scepter is not going to be moving for quite a while. And do you remember what pattern is being pointed at between these two sections? The Alpha and Omega. We are at the Alpha and Omega point. Right here, where these two sections are divided, we are on the threshold right now, going from the one to the other, but the scepter is still in Judah, and the scepter is still between the feet. This is very important, because we're at a threshold involving the patterns of both of these, where the Alpha and the Omega meet. And the enemy knows that this is being pointed to. This threshold time is being pointed to, the pattern. Even though the scepter is not moving, celestially, the time clock is pointing to the pattern though. This point rehearses the Alpha and Omega. Even though the scepter is not moving, this Alpha and Omega is rehearsed at this point because this is the marker point for it. And you're familiar with Alpha and Omega, and that is the Greek equivalent denoting the beginning and the ending, the first and the last. That is in Greek. In modern Hebrew, that would be the equivalent, the Aleph and the Tav. But in early Hebrew, this is what it would look like, in more pictograph form, an ox and an X mark, which denotes a covenant. And it's common knowledge that this pictograph and the Aleph and the Tav, the Hebrew equivalent of the Alpha and Omega, literally means the strength of the covenant. The ox denotes the strength and the X denotes a covenant. Put them together and you have strength of the covenant. So when we consider what is at this point, we've just rehearsed that we're the sons of God. We see the sign of the Son of Man about to start, which is the Shiloh prophecy, rehearsal of that, the one who is promised when God made a covenant with Abraham that a Redeemer would come through his line, and then all the subsequent promises and covenants with the people of Israel. And then, once he did come, he also made another covenant with his church, on top of all the other covenants he made too. So keep in mind, who is making the new covenant with the church? The embodiment of the Alpha and Omega, the Son of Man, Shiloh, is the one who made the covenant. We are now at a threshold where we are reminded that Shiloh, our Redeemer, made a covenant, a New Testament with us. Are some wheels starting to turn why this time is so important? This time on the celestial clock that can be seen in the heavens right now reminds us of the strength of the covenant. And what was used to picture that early on when God made the covenant to Abraham was an ox and an X. Pictograph rehearsal, a picture rehearsal of the story involving the strength of an ox and of the covenant. And when you consider all the other patterns we've seen before with the shepherding and how Abraham and his descendants were shepherds of cattle and sheep, when they are reminded of the strength of the covenant and the scepter not departing from Judah, with the very title of Alpha and Omega, Aleph Tav, the strength of the covenant, we're also reminded of the scepter and the one who made the covenant, Shiloh. This is why this time is so important, because this time on the celestial clock reminds us of when covenants were made and who made them. What was so significant about the last opposition point? The patterns that were pointed to at the last opposition point were about our redemption, how Shiloh, the promised lamb, how he came and paid our atonement, how he paid our ransom, he paid our redemption, and he made a new covenant with his blood and with his body, a new covenant with us, telling us to remember it till he comes back. When should we be expecting him to come back? How about when the celestial clock reminds us of the strength of the covenant that was made with us by Shiloh? We should have the expectation of our bridegroom returning at the marker, at the rehearsal, when we are reminded of the strength of the covenant that he made with us. In our Shiloh booklet, it's in our Google Drive, link in the description box. Definitely download it and read it. On page A2 in the appendix area, we talk about comparing then and now, about Christ's first coming, and how we're looking forward to the second time of our redemption pickup. And when you compare Jupiter at opposition, when you compare the Alpha and Omega points, consider when Christ, the Son of Man, came the first time, he fulfilled the covenants that he made with Abraham and his descendants. The strength of the covenant was fulfilled when Christ came the first time prophetically, right here. And now we're at a point on the celestial clock and prophetic time where we are reminded and have the expectation of our bridegroom, who made a covenant with us, returning to pick up his purchased possession. There are so many incredible pictures coming together right now where we are in the days and hours ahead. We have the full expectation of the strength of the covenant being fulfilled, the one who made the promises, fulfilling what he said. So here we are at an important milestone, an important threshold, where the celestial clock is telling us that we should be expecting the covenant promises to be fulfilled by our Redeemer, Shiloh, the Lamb of God, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right at the time that the Bible passages are being read about that very same promise, right at the same time that the celestial signs are getting ready to start the rehearsal of the sign of the Son of Man who did come to redeem us, right at the same time that the pregnancy picture time-wise is about to start as well with 40 weeks. Right here, we can have faith and trust in the strength of the covenant and the promises that He has made, that He has gone to prepare a place for us, and that He will come again. And so when should we expect Him? We should expect Him at the time of the reminding of the covenant. There is a lot coming together right now. There are also things we do not know, so we are going to be sober, we're going to be vigilant. I would say pad your expectations, and we're going to continue to watch going forward, but we have to be like the wise virgins. We know He's coming around here. And just like the wise men, we are learning some very important things that we've been wanting to know right at the very end as we continue to go forward in faith. We're seeing incredible pictures of the tapestry redemption being shown to us. With everything we've been seeing, let us go forward with expectation of the strength of the covenant of our Redeemer, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, coming to gather His people. We will continue to watch, but we will continue to be sober. We will make sure we are shining bright. We are going to be vigilant, and we are going to watch. And as we go forward, we are going to remember the covenant that was made with us. 1 Corinthians 11:23. For I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which He was betrayed, took bread, and when He had given thanks, He brake it and said, Take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also He took the cup when He had supped, saying, This cup is the New Testament, the new covenant in my blood. This do ye, as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till He come. Notice the connection with Christ coming back, and that He wanted us to remember this covenant. Bride, remember my covenant. Remember my covenant because I'm coming back. Hint, hint. What do you suppose will happen if we don't remember the covenant? What else do you think we won't remember? What else do you think we won't be mindful of? When we forget or push aside remembering that we are redeemed in what was done on our behalf, when we forget and neglect to remember the tapestry of redemption, we are going to miss out on the fulfillment and the strength of the covenant and when He's coming again. This do ye as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till He come. Revelation 22:12. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Our Redeemer, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Alpha and the Omega, the strength of the covenant. He is coming quickly. Let us be mindful of this. We have heard the midnight cry that He's coming. We have seen so many celestial signs reminding us our Redeemer is coming, and His promises are true. So let us rise up. Let us trim our lamps. Let us shine bright, and let us go forward, going out to meet Him halfway, serving Jesus Christ first and highest above all else. Maranatha.